was a lot, and I saw this morning they had Russell Wilson as the 33rd best player in the decade. Under Matt Ryan, Gronk missed 45 games in the decade. Patrick Willis retired 6 years ago. They were above Russell Wilson. You and I have discussed this. There's even a story 2 days ago that Cam Newton may be going to Seattle. At some point, if you were Russell Wilson, wouldn't you say to yourself, Peter, Cam Newton? I never get hurt. Like, I'm not – I think deep down Russell's too classy of a guy to talk about this stuff, but I think he's bothered. I think he's bothered by this. Do you?
Well, if you were Russell Wilson and you had played 8 years at his level of football, and think of this, he got drafted in 2012 in the middle of the 3rd round. And from that moment, he has started every football game that the Seattle Seahawks have played, regular season playoffs. And he's played at an extraordinarily high level. He's the 2nd highest rated quarterback in NFL history. And in those 8 years, playing at that high level, winning a Super Bowl, he's never got one MVP vote in those 8 years. So if I were Russell Wilson, I might go to bed at night occasionally, be very happy, seemingly very happily married, very well compensated, and look at the ceiling occasionally and say, what is wrong with people?
Yeah, that's the minimum, I think I would say. I don't have the composure of Russell Wilson. By the way, the Cam Newton thing to me didn't make, because I do think Cam fits in Pittsburgh behind a quarterback that gets hurt. I think Cam and Ben have some similarities in style. I don't think I don't think Big Ben's an off-season workout freak. I don't think he even fits in Seattle, and I don't think Seattle needs a high-profile backup. Are you shocked at all that Pittsburgh hasn't made a run at Cam, or nobody really has, and this is the first discussion of any singular team?
Pittsburgh, I thought, should have should have signed Jameis Winston. I think he's very, very good for that particular offense. Got a great arm. He's a lot like Roethlisberger. And look, Cam Newton, depending on, one of the problems right now with just Cam Newton is I don't really know who he is. So last year in training camp, he told me that he was going to be a different kind of quarterback. He wasn't going to run around as much and changing his style a bit. And then he got hurt again. So we don't really know what Cam Newton is. And that's not being critical of Cam Newton. It's just that for the last year and a half, he has either not played or had a terrible shoulder injury that the gritty and gutty Cam played through. But I don't know whether he is a guy who's going to run around very much, whether he's going to be almost exclusively pocket, kind of like Roethlisberger is. So that's the biggest problem right now with Cam Newton.
We kind of do an autopsy, a word that Kevin Wildes on First Thing First used the other morning on the Tom Brady relationship with now his former teammates and coaches. And I'm not really interested in it because they won a bunch, and I don't really care about how they got along. It didn't affect their winning. But there was a story that came out from Gary Myers, New York Daily News, former reporter, that one of the reasons Brady left is he and Josh McDaniels, that relationship deteriorated. And my takeaway was, well, it didn't hurt winning, so, I don't care, really. But do you buy the report that is it?
I have a tremendous amount of respect for Gary. I really do. I've known him forever. I don't know that, Colin. I can't say honestly, I just can't say anything about it, because when I heard it, I said, wow. Josh McDaniels and Tom Brady always seem joined at the hip to me, and I hadn't heard that. But having said that, I don't know. I truly don't know. So, the way I kind of look at this is when a guy leaves a place, there's a lot of things that are going to be reported about the circumstances surrounding him leaving. But that one, I'm just not aware of it.
So you recently interviewed Anthony Fauci, whose qualifications were never questioned, but we live in a very partisan time now. So if you don't vote on that side, it's a very polarizing world we live in. And suddenly this brilliant guy, we're questioning his credentials, which to me makes no sense at all. It's laughable. But you interviewed him recently, and what was your takeaway?
I mean, it's amazing to me how what Anthony Fauci said is such a hot button issue. I sent out a tweet, I think, what day is today? Tuesday evening, in which I said basically, Fauci has been doing this. He started studying science in college in 1957. He's been the head of the most respected science agency, the National Institutes of Health, in the United States since 1984. He's probably the most respected infectious disease specialist in the United States. And yet over the last 10 weeks, we tend to think that people who write sports columns or talk on sports radio, or who quite honestly are politicians, now are saying that Fauci is a fraud, he's trash, he's no good. And Colin, I mean, the amazing thing is, I've had, within an hour, I think I'll have about 100,000 likes on that tweet that I had, which is 5 times more than I've ever had. But almost as strenuously is the other side of people saying he's a quack. So I don't get where we are in this country. And quite frankly, it's ridiculous and disturbing. But as far as what he said and what it means for football, I mean, I asked him flat out, the NFL is obviously going to test every week, and probably more than once a week, all of the players and essential personnel on every team. So if 3 or 4 players on a team test positive on a Friday or Saturday, as Fauci said to me, you got to shut it down. That means, in essence, that team has got to sit on the sideline for 2 weeks in quarantine. And everybody can say, hey, just take those 3 or 4 guys out. But here's the problem with just saying that. Number one, a guy on a team can test positive the next day after testing negative.
Yeah.
So, you almost have to test these players every day. But the other big problem is, I want you to think, if you're Team X and you're getting ready to host Team Y, and before the game, 4 guys on Team X test positive. What do you think the player rep for Team Y is going to say when they get to the stadium on Sunday? I can tell you what they're going to say. We're not playing against a team that just had 4 guys taken out because they're positive for the coronavirus. So this is going to be a very fascinating season, in my opinion. I think the NFL is going to play, but I mean, just fasten your seatbelts.
Yeah, I mean, I've said before, social distancing matters. Everything else, I have no idea. I have said very little about this, other than we have to manage it. We manage mental health. We manage everything. I don't know anything about this. I do think there's a bunch of internet experts. I'm not one. To your point, it does bother me that the leading man in America, or person, in regards to a virus of this nature, is now being called a quack. I don't get it. So we are today. Peter King, NBC Sports. I got to run. Peter, thank you.
I get it. Yeah. One third of the country is calling him a quack, and that third, I think we know what that all means. But whatever, that's the way life is in this country.
Yeah, it is the way it is. Peter King, thanks, Peter. Appreciate it. I mean, the internet has turned people like, that don't know anything into experts, and experts into people that don't know anything. It's